Buenas noches, mi gente, and welcome to the FayWhat show. FayWhat! So, our show's mission is to entertain, educate, and unite our community with real-life topics in a safe, positive, and fun environment. Because you know what? Together we win. Divided we fall. You know it. You know, our table topics are human topics, conversations that need to be had, and we aren't afraid to have them here at the FayWhat show. June of this year marked the 40th anniversary of the first scientific report describing pneumonia, which later became known as acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS. And for a bit, they even called it gay cancer. Can you even begin to imagine that? So according to the CDC, more than 32 million people have died worldwide from AIDS, and 38 million people are living with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. The last 40 years of the HIV epidemic have given us an in-depth look at society, science, medicine, and socioeconomic impacts of AIDS on communities and countries. Unfortunately, the AIDS crisis of the 1980s was steeped in misinformation and discrimination, especially towards gay men who were highly affected by the disease. Being diagnosed with HIV/AIDS has a different meaning than it did just 2 decades ago. It's a whole new world. And for those who are a little older and started treating HIV in the 90s and saw that world, it was tragic. They watched wonderful people who were brave and fought their virus, but unfortunately weren't able to stop the virus from replicating. Fear, stigma, and honestly, ignorance. That is what defined the HIV epidemic that raged through the world in the 1980s, killing thousands of people who may only have had a few weeks or months from diagnosis to death, if they even managed to be diagnosed before they died. With no effective treatment available in the 1980s, there was little hope for those diagnosed with HIV, facing debilitating illness and certain death within years, unfortunately. Much progress has been made since that time, but there is still much more work to be done. So today we'll talk to our special guest about this milestone, how far we've come, and what more needs to happen. This conversation is not one of the past, but one of today and one of the future. Could AIDS one day be a thing of the past? Could we cure AIDS? To answer these questions and many more questions, we brought in Test and Treatment Program Coordinator for Comprehensive Health Center, Adrian Toca, to educate us today. And then, of course, we'll finish the show with some laughter, baby, because we love to laugh in our community, right? With our funny, silly segment, this week, it's all about the funniest gay pride signs. Oh, man. I'm not gay, but my wife is. I like that one. All right, so let's get started. So as a South Florida native, Adrian Toka has always had a passion for serving our diverse community. And as the Test and Treatment Program Coordinator for Comprehensive Health Center, his goal is to really make a mark in ending the HIV epidemic through an easy linkage to care tailored to the needs of each individual. Adrian is able to help people both access treatment while empowering everyone to know their HIV status. Currently, he serves on the Contigo Fund Board of Directors and Peer Support Space Board in Central Florida, and believes that in order to see the changes that you want in the world, you must be the beacon of change. So, welcome to our show, Mr. Adrian Toka!
Hi. Thank
How are
you.
you,
I'm so
my
happy
friend?
to be here. I'm doing quite well. Excelente. ¿Cómo está? How are you doing?
I'm really good. We could be brothers. Look at you. Like, it's like
I
looking in the
told you.
mirror.
Yeah, exactly. I saw her photo and I was like, Mom, is there something I don't know?
You got some explaining to do. And you know, since I'm half Puerto Rican and we like to, procreate.
Ya tú sabes. Uno
Need
nunca
I
sabe,
say
you never
more?
know.
Need I
Yeah.
say more? You know, you've got such an interesting background. How about you tell us a little bit about what you do over at Comprehensive?
Sure. So at Comprehensive Health Center, I pretty much, alongside my team, on a daily basis, figure out ways to simplify linkage to care. Pretty much, linkage to care means connecting people to the needs they have. If they're living with HIV, how do we simplify this in a way that we make people realize how important this is? One of the biggest things and hurdles I've heard from patients and fellow colleagues is, people will get a diagnosis, but then to actually get in to see a doctor now, especially during COVID, isn't an easy task. So what we do is we streamline PrEP, same-day PrEP services for those that are identified to be qualified candidates. If you're living with HIV or hepatitis C, we then go ahead and get you access to treatment, care, insurance. We go above and beyond to make sure that we help you get to where you need to be. And
Well,
so
and
it's
I was stalking your organization. I mean, I was researching your organization, whatever you want to call it. I call it stalking. And you know, that was what the reviews were saying about you guys. Were just like, you know, we can't when we can't get an appointment with a doctor, these guys came through and they made it happen. And that's just incredible what you guys are doing. And you know, when we were talking, we were thinking about doing this topic. It was like, how do we find someone that's going to be best suited to answer these crazy questions? That there is so much bogus information out there, Adrian, about AIDS. Have you encountered that with people?
oh, of course, of course. I've heard people tell me, "Oh, can I hug someone if they're crying and their tears come out?" And I'm like, "Of course. You're not gonna get HIV from like wiping someone's tears away." Or someone asked me, if someone bites a French fry, can I bite it after? And it's like, yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, I mean, I would want my own French fries, but yeah, you can take a bite off.
Yeah, right. I don't share, but you know.
Yeah.
So we've got a ton of stuff to get to. So let's get to it. Adrian, do you think that people have forgotten about the millions of people who died and were affected from AIDS in the 80s and 90s because of today's treatments like PrEP, etc.?
I think that the treatments that have been created on the backs of those that came before us definitely has made it so easily accessible that people now that are getting HIV, a lot of them don't realize what happened in the 80s, how people were dying from the medications, and people have forgotten. But I think at the same time, there are a lot of people, both younger and older, that realize that and are very much being very vocal and reminding people that, there's people that walked before us the same way they walked for our rights to live freely. They laid in those beds and they walked daily trying to help us figure out what was the next step in HIV care.
Do you deal with many women at your organization? I mean, we're all constantly talking about the effect that this has had on the male gay community, but do you deal with many women when it comes to HIV/AIDS?
So people would be surprised to know that yes, women today account for 23% of the new cases of diagnosis in HIV. We do have women, a lot of women in their 50s, in their 40s, in their 30s, people as young as 13 years old coming in and getting tested and getting results they didn't expect. So it's definitely something that's prevalent. We see that it affects African American women a lot more than women that are identified to be Caucasian. So it's one of those things where it's disproportionately affecting Black and Brown communities, and that's why, as a Cuban Puerto Rican, I feel like it's part of my mission to let us know and take healthy steps.
Why do you think that, like, what needs to happen to reduce that stigma that you talk about? Because you have these stats, but we don't know how accurate they are because many people don't even come out of the AIDS closet, so to speak.
Of course. So there, when it comes to the stigma, there's so many intersections that can affect people. I know, being Cuban, Puerto Rican, Caribbean, and being in Miami, we're connected to so many different communities that are Hispanic, and our culture, the way we're raised, plays a big role in it. You're not supposed to have sex until you're married. You're not supposed to be hooking up. You're not supposed to be out there just viviendo la vida. So it
Hmm.
makes it one of those things where social pressures, your family, you just don't want to open up about this. So, like every human being, we do things on the low. We do what we want in the end. So that definitely is playing a huge role in stigma.
How can others support LGBTQ plus somebody in their lives that could be living with HIV/AIDS? How do you think that we can support them?
So, great question, Faye. Just to bring up something, because I'm a big ally to my brothers and sisters of trans experience, and during Transgender Awareness Month, which is coming up, so I hope everybody's ready. One saying that stuck with me is nothing for us without us, which to me applies. If you want to support people that are living with HIV, you better, let me not use a bad word, you better have had an HIV test. Either order one by mail, because now we all can get them for free by mail. I know our organization, you go to chcmed.com/prep, you can get a mail order HIV kit. That's the first step, because if you don't know what it feels like to sit in that chair, it's going to be really hard to emotionally connect with somebody. And then separate from that, it's get educated. These days, you equals you. Undetectable equals untransmittable. And if you have never heard that, I encourage you to visit me on social media. Let's have a talk. I'm super friendly, and I will empower you to know what you have to say to be there for those that you love.
Ah, I love you. I love you. And this
I love
show
you
is all
too.
about education. Okay. I really wanted to make this show possible because of the education aspect. And, we are an instant gratification community in the LGBTQ community. And I think just life in general right now, even our straight, for allies are like that. We get instant information on our phones like this. We want it now, now, now. And unfortunately, this can lead to a lot of misinformation or getting your info from your twink friend that you shouldn't be listening to. All right. So here at the FayWhat show, we want to get you info precisely, accurately, and not from the twink that you met at Hunter's. I love you,
Hello.
twinks. Don't get mad at me, but you know what I mean. All right. So our next segment is called BS You Heard from the Twink at Hunter's versus
Woo.
Reality Girl.
Hey,
So Adrian, are you ready to give people reality versus BS?
let's do it.
All right, okay. So BS, the twink told you from Hunters. HIV is a gay or LGBT disease. What's the reality there?
BS. HIV affects everyone, whether you're gay, bisexual, lesbian, transgender, heterosexual, pansexual. You can be affected. If you have sex, you can catch HIV. That's why it's important to know how to have healthy sex, which is what we encourage at Comprehensive Health Center.
Okay, next. BS, the twink at Hunters told you. I'm over 50. I don't need to worry about no HIV. What's the reality?
The reality is, HIV is impacting people over the age of 50. I can tell you in our practice, we will see people 50, 60, 70 years old come in and get their first HIV diagnosis. So just know that if it goes up or you stick it in, you can catch it.
BS, the twink at Hunters told me. I'm in a monogamous relationship. I don't got to worry about no HIV. What's the
I will
reality,
say
Adrian?
the reality is, unfortunately, that's BS. We would all love to trust our partner, but we have to remember at the end of the day, you are responsible for your own body. Even if you are married, when you get that checkup on those nuts or you get that pap smear, you should be asking for an HIV test. Make it routine because we need to know the status. I want to know every year if I have diabetes. So I want to know every year if I had HIV.
Every year I had to get a mammogram. I mean, so why not?
Yeah.
It's just part of the package. BS, the twink at Hunters told you. I can tell whether someone is HIV positive just by looking at them. BS or reality?
BS. That is not true. I've met some very cute guys that are undetectable, and you would never, ever know. And it's the truth. One thing that I'm sure all of us have heard, especially if you're on dating apps, is, do you have STDs? Do you have HIV? And they say, I'm clean. Honey, the only thing clean are the clothes in my closet. Let me know your HIV status.
BS. You cannot get HIV from oral sex. What's the reality?
So the reality is, as per the CDC, that theoretically, if a man who is HIV positive, not on treatment, or on treatment but hasn't reached undetectable status, and they come in your mouth, by theory, you can contract HIV. But when we look at the different forms of transmission, oral sex is the lowest to almost no possible exposure.
But if you have a cut or something in your mouth, then like you said, then the percentage goes up of the possibility,
Exactly.
correct?
Exactly. If you had oral surgery, if you had bleeding gums, if you have a cut, in Spanish we
If
say
a penis
llagas,
poked you, I mean,
ulcers. You never know if you're sucking too hard and you cut your upper lip. I mean, it happens.
BS or reality? Okay, this is BS that the twink told you at Hunters. I will contract HIV if I have sex with someone who is living with HIV only.
BS. So we know that if you are living with HIV and you are undetectable, then you are no longer able to transmit the virus. But if you have sex and the person has HIV and you have HIV, you can end up in a very complicated situation. If the person has HIV and you don't, you can definitely catch it.
Wow, but there's obviously there's a bunch of different ways that you could protect yourself. Use a condom,
Exactly.
get tested, talk to your partners. I
Exactly.
understand that also you can get HIV or AIDS by sharing needles.
Needles, people don't realize that, but the second leading way of transmission for HIV is needle sharing. We have organizations that we partner up with, like the Idea Exchange, which really encourage, like we do, harm reduction, meeting people where they're at, because we are seeing that HIV is transmitting through needles, and people just don't think about that.
BS the twink told you at Hunters. I recently tested negative for HIV, so I don't have anything to worry about.
Well, I want to
What's the
encourage
deal?
you. You have to know that that's BS because HIV has a window period. You can have HIV running through that system of yours for up to 3 months, and the antibody tests that we use to look for the virus, that are rapid tests that normally people get for like 15 minutes, it may not show up on that test. So it's definitely BS. You can have it and you can get a negative test. That's why if you come in and you get a negative test, we set you up on a 3 month appointment from the last time you had sex to have another test.
Next, BS and what's the reality? I see my doctor every year for a full physical. I'm sure the HIV test is included.
So that is BS. Not every practitioner tests for HIV. Not every doctor is well educated on HIV. And so a lot of people will avoid it. I think, just like at our practice, the doctors that are doing HIV testing, even if they're not telling you, are the ones that have signs up that are saying, we do automatic HIV testing, routine testing with all of your labs. If that doesn't say it anywhere in the walls, it's your responsibility to speak up for yourself.
BS that the twink told you at Hunters. HIV drugs are poison. They will destroy your body. What's the reality, Adrian?
So the reality is that thanks to those people before us in the 80s that we are honoring now, because of the medications that they took, the medicines that we have these days are amazing. This year, aside from Biktarvy, Dovato, which are amazing medications for HIV, they just released Cabenuva, which is now an injectable. So they are not poison. They will help you live long and healthy lives. With HIV treatment, you will die of being an old person before you die from HIV.
And these new ones that you're talking about, the injection, that would be like a once a month kind of thing, and that's it?
Yeah, so it's two shots, one on each butt cheek, and it's once a month. Like we tell our patients at our practice, to be able to qualify for that, you need to show long term undetectable status. We need to see that you could take a pill for a couple of years and be healthy on it and be stable. Because if you forget to take a pill daily, you're more likely to forget getting a shot in the butt once a month. But that's out there now. The future is here, and one pill a day is about to disappear.
I love it. I love it. BS. HIV is a death sentence.
BS, BS, BS. HIV is not a death sentence. People with HIV in managed care, seeing a doctor routinely, have better quality of lives than people that are dealing with diabetes. This is something that is talked about in our realm, in our field, and we know that these days with HIV treatment, you will have the most amazing life.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. BS. You are on PrEP, so you don't need to use condoms.
BS, BS. Condoms in conjunction with PrEP. Condoms is your first line of defense. First and foremost, because PrEP doesn't protect you from gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, herpes, all these other fun things out there. And Florida, if you're here in South Florida, we are on the rise for that. On top of that, there are people out there that are resistant, that their HIV is resistant to the medications that we take for PrEP. So you want to be in using condoms so that you don't expose yourself to that kind of predicament.
I think I read somewhere, like going back to what you just said, I think I had read somewhere that South Florida was definitely on the rise, and we have a lot more cases than people really talk about, which again was another reason why I wanted to do this segment, because it's not something that's like really talked about that often anymore.
Faye, you're so right, and I'm so grateful that you reached out about this because Miami, Florida has been number one for many years. We go from number one to number two to number three, back up. We don't stop when it comes to new cases of HIV. Just to give you some comparison, there are more people in New York State living with HIV, but yet we in Florida have more new cases than a state where there's more people living with HIV. Partially because managed care, You get someone undetectable, they can no longer transmit the virus. One of the scariest things that people don't want to believe is that you will have a 13-year-old come in for an HIV test, come back positive, and tell you, you cannot tell my parents. And at that point, it is up to me as their advocate to help them get the care they need and protect their privacy.
And you would still do so, even though the person would be 13.
Yeah. They're
Wow, that's
legally allowed to
incredible.
get tested at 13, and their parents don't need to know anything. If they're on their parents' insurance, there are laws we can call and tell them to make sure that they separate bill all that stuff to us so we can take care of the bills. There's,
I just got
imagine,
chills. I just got chills because I think of those kids, and especially those trans kids that have to deal with all the crazy misery that's going on with these anti-trans bills in Arkansas, in Tennessee, and all those crazy places where if they were to go to anybody in their school and tell them, I have an issue or I'd like to get tested, they automatically have to tell the parent. They would out that kid to their parent.
yeah, in Central Florida, one of the things, and if we have any parents watching, know that at the schools will let us come test, but we're not allowed to give results on campus. And that's insane because if your child is having sex and they catch HIV, you want them to have access to all the resources possible to stay healthy and minimize the impact HIV will have in their lives.
Next BS question, Adrian. PrEP is only for people who have a lot of sex. And I'm going through a dry spell, so I don't want to use condoms. Do I really need to think about PrEP?
BS, you do want to think about prep because I don't know about you, but I don't pre plan a week in advance when I'm going to have sex. It kind
You
of
don't
just,
plan to be a whore, right? It just,
you
it's not on
know,
the schedule, right?
when it's going to happen, it presents itself. And if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. So to make sure that I enjoy my meal, I need to be protected with some prep. That way, I don't have to keep any left of the leftovers.
You're a joy, Adrian. You really are. You are
Muchas
just
gracias.
incredible. We were talking about before how you started out at Pride Lines as a youth,
Oh my goodness.
and you got
Yes.
to get the best of that organization, and that compelled you to go to the next level and make your presence in this world that much important for other LGBTQ plus youth coming behind you. And I commend you immensely for that. That I was telling you before, we need to have you back on the show just to talk about your journey because it seems so incredible.
I would love to come back on the show. We could talk about my journey, the future, and the impact both you and I, Faye, can make on our community.
Qué lindo. So I don't want to end our time together without reminding viewers that organizations like Comprehensive Health Center ensure that people have all that they need to live with HIV/AIDS, to navigate post-positive care. But you do so much more, right? Don't you do other things aside from that?
Yes, so we offer case management where if you need health insurance, we'll help you figure out health insurance. We do linkage for other services. We offer transportation. One thing I love about our program is we had a lot of people expressing a need for cell phones. So I turned around and spoke to Dr. Rudolph Moise about this, and I said, look, this is the need. And a lot of people that we are serving are in a low income situation where they can't afford a phone. And if they can't afford a phone, how are they supposed to have a conducive life? How are they supposed to take their PrEP or their HIV medicine? So he said, you know what, you're right. Let's make this happen. And with his business mindset, he made it happen. So one of the things we do for our patients is if you're on PrEP for at least 3 months and then you need a cell phone, you come in and through a foundation called Cares First Foundation, we set that up. If you are HIV positive the same day of your diagnosis, if I see you're in need, we set you up with a cell phone the same day. We help you get access to housing. Hepatitis C, the same thing, same day access. Because I want to simplify it. I've had patients come in and they tell me, you're going to give me a phone for free? I said, yeah, it's unlimited talk, text, and web as long as you stay in care, come to all of your appointments, stay in treatment, we will pay for this phone. People have told me, what do you mean for like life? I'm like, yeah, for life. If we can take a bill off your shoulders, why not? We want to encourage you to take care of yourself.
Papito Lindo, you are incredible. Thank you for being the beacon that you are, the light that you are. Thank you for saying yes to us. We've got so many incredible HIV/AIDS representatives here in South Florida, and I know that everything happens in divine order. So when you were connected to us by one of our favorite people on the planet, Miss Shay Schaefer, I knew that it would be an instant connection. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you for spending time with us and being your authentic self. I mean, you are just definitely incredible. We need to clone your ass.
Thank you so much. And shout out to Shay, Pride Lines. I love you, Pride Lines. One of the biggest parts of my life. Shay, girl, keep being fabulous. Faye, I'm so excited to have been here. please, if anybody is in need, give us a call, 305-688-0811. Ask for Adrian. They direct you to me, and I'm always available to help. Sin pena, anything you've done, I've done it 10 times harder, so there's no judgment from me.
Yes, yes. All right, and make sure you reach out to Adrian, all his social media platforms as well. Thank you, Adrian, for being part of the FayWhat show, and we will definitely drag you in here again in the future.
Looking forward to it. I'll have a new suit on for you.
Qué lindo.
Bye.
He's adorable. So don't forget, family, that if you like what you're watching, tell others and subscribe. Ring that bell and share. FayWhat! Gracias for all the love and support. Wasn't Adrian awesome? Ah. And now the part of the show where we let it all hang out. Wait, did it pop out? No, it didn't pop out. Okay, no, not like that. All right, sucios, you thought my boob's gonna pop out. All right, here is the funniest gay pride signs. We're gonna begin with the first one. The safe word is confifi. Oh, wasn't that word that Trump was using? No wonder no one knew the meaning. It was probably like a sexy term between Trump and Melania. You think she touched him? Next. Simba was raised by two guys and he turned out fine. I was raised by a straight couple and I'm a hot mess, so imagínate tú. Next, straight, so is spaghetti until you heat it up. Very true, and you add some sauce to any of us and we are delicious. Next, if I can't marry my boyfriend, then I'll marry your daughter. God, I was a beard for many, 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 many gay boyfriends of mine. Thanksgiving was always a lot of fun. Next, guys, I said I hate figs, not. I'm not really a big fan of figs either, para que lo sepa. Yeah. Next, Jesus hung out with 12 guys and a prostitute. He was more like me than anybody. Like, that's literally my life. I hang out with at least 12 gay guys and at least one hoe. I mean, there's always at least one prostitute. Next, if Harry Potter taught us anything, is that no one deserves to live in the closet. Ever again. I'm never going back there unless to pull out my Louboutins. Next, Trump, the only D word I cannot handle. Nor do I want to. Like, ew. Ugh. That was the funniest gay pride signs. If you have an idea or a story that you'd like to share or a funny meme or something, we'd love to hear all about it. Cuéntanos. And it might be featured in one of our upcoming segments of FayWhat. Send them over our way to our Instagram page at FayWhat YouTube or email us at info@faywhat.com. What a great show. What a great show and what an educational show, right? Did you guys learn a lot? I learned a lot. So I want to take a moment and thank those viewers that have told me that they have learned from our segments. That means everything to us, and it really is the reason why we started to do this show. We want to educate, we want to have fun too, but education is just so important. Education is power, especially in our community. I'd like to thank our incredible guest, Adrian Toca. Wasn't he adorable? Super sweet. Follow him and stalk him or whatever, you know. We definitely have to have Adrian back. We also have to thank those behind the scenes. We can't do any of this. I can't do any of this without you guys. To my producer director, Luis Flores, you are just my rock, my friend. I love you. Our project manager, David Fernandez, that always makes sure that I look at least halfway decent. And all of you for allowing us to do our thing. Please join us next week for another great show. And don't forget to share, subscribe, and like us on YouTube, Facebook, and IG. So let's talk a little bit, my farewell message to you guys about today's topic. You know, today people with HIV who know their status take HIV medication as prescribed and can live long, healthy lives and have effectively no risk of transmitting HIV to anyone. We have made remarkable progress in preventing and treating HIV in the US and around the world. And this progress has been built on the shoulders of the early pioneers of the modern AIDS movement, like Adrian was talking about, who gave their hearts, their souls, and many gave their lives so that we can end the HIV epidemic. HIV is not an easy virus to defeat. 37.7 million people globally were living with HIV in 2020. 1.5 million people became newly affected with HIV in 2020. That's during COVID quarantine. 27.5 million people were accessing antiretroviral therapy in 2020. 27.5 people that didn't have to get AIDS because they were on the right plan of attack. 680,000 people died from AIDS-related illnesses in 2020. 680,000. And nearly 1 million people still die every year from the virus because they don't know they have HIV and are not on a treatment, or they find out too late. Get tested. While the world has committed to ending AIDS by 2030, rates of new infections and deaths are not falling rapidly enough to make this happen, it seems. And with all these stats, I'm forced to pause and to honor one of those lost. I have like little bits and memories of this man. My mom hung out with this man when I was a little girl, and his name was Manuel Miguel Hernandez. And for someone to this day that can't wrap her head around the fact that her daughter is gay, I'm still surprised about their once friendship. I'll never forget how he made me feel. He made me feel so special. He was different, but I could not quite put my finger on what it was, and I actually didn't care. He brought me fruit and frilly dresses and always told me I was beautiful. It was so hard to believe that because I was super awkward and I felt super ugly all the time as a girl. I mean, I was 6 feet tall at 12 with a big afro. He loved cats and jewelry, and he drove a beat up blue car with manual windows with Latin music blaring from the speakers. I remember that his roommate died, and my mom's explanation was that he didn't follow the path of God. And that made absolutely no sense to me. Manuel soon disappeared too, and my mom gave me no reason why and didn't help me cope with his loss. It wasn't until years later that I was told the truth, that Miguel Manuel had died of complications due to AIDS, and he died alone, and I couldn't do anything about it. And that has always stayed with me. I will never, ever forget Manuel, my Boricua fairy godparent. And your death will always matter to me, and it will never be in vain. So get tested, know the facts, and I hope that we helped with any false facts out there. Yo soy FayWhat! Thank you for allowing me to be me every single week. I'm sending love, peace, and happiness to you all. Los quiero. Stay gay.